Hannah Fry's video about olive trees was fantastic, and that made me. I started thinking about all sorts of other things. She did another good one about infinity and Gilbert's Hotel, and it was pretty good. Definitely one of the best explanations I've seen, or it wasn't quite there, but it's the way to explain ordinal notations. So, what is the connection between weird ordinal notations and olive trees? And I came up with, well, the connection is the tree-like structure, and also the way it was a Terence McKenna talk where he explained in detail this idea ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, and he gave a specific example of human beings in the womb. The fetus starts out as a single-celled creature and then progresses through all these stages of evolution. It becomes multicellular and then through almost like a nematode, and it grows legs and becomes something like a lizard. Oh look! Cow interest. Hello. Did you do that? How are you doing? Some of them have got names on their ears. Have you got a name? No, I'm not going to show you my name. Aren't they pretty? Hello. Where were we going? But this, I didn't put that video on my blog because it was it's one called The End of the Road or something like that. And then he goes on to talk about the trauma of childbirth and that it's like a kind of death. And then he talks about the extinction of humanity as a three-dimensional species. We need to embrace it, not fight it. I still think it would be easier to enjoy if we took the trouble to make the place we live in a bit better, instead of degrading it, building rockets to go to Mars. Laurie's got her ticket to Mars. She doesn't hang out on Twitter anymore. I think she had Barack Obama following her, and I think it creeped her out a bit. I don't know who follows me on Twitter. They're all cam girl accounts, as far as I can tell. But the thing about ordinal notations and trees and this tree of life, no, this set me off thinking about the stuff Michael Levin's doing, and that I definitely don't know what to make of that. I would be much more receptive if he wasn't hyping it up so much, and talking about intervention and control and the future of medical science, and this just all that just turns me off completely. So obviously he reached his goal. And yeah, so I need to stop thinking about Michael Levin. Ordinal notations. So because of that, I was thinking about my mother. She's got, I think, probably more related to depression than anything else. She's got memory problems. And she doesn't write to me anymore. She can't write. And thinking about olive trees, how you don't know how old the individual tree is. And the part of the tree that you date by rings or whatever turns out not to be, in the case of olive trees, it's not reliable because it's the root complex. And that made me think about the mycorrhizal fungi and oh dear, can't remember his name. Stennett. Apparently fungi were one of the first life forms in the fossil record. So it seems likely that the fungal connection with trees is kind of fundamental to the evolution of trees. And fungi are they're like a neuronal system, and I think they're also they respond to electricity. But so you have all this life. How does this get us back to ordinal notations? Well, it was when I was a kid. I remember I was in, I think it was sub B or sub A in the South African school system, and that's when you're 5 or 6 years old. Apparently you're supposed to be 6. There was some kind of scheme. It was something to do with whether your birthday was on or after a certain date, and apparently I was one of the younger of the cohort because of where my birthday fell in the year, and I think I went aged 5, but some children were aged 6 by the time they went to sub A. Anyway, I think they made me repeat a year at some point. I think in the system when I was a kid there, the system at the time, you actually had to pass your exams and in order to graduate to the next year, and you could fail and then you would mandatorily be made to repeat the year. And in this case I had apparently done okay in the exam, but they talked to my parents and everyone decided that it was better for me to do another year. But anyway, that was after that. I remember sitting on the floor of the primary of this sub A class. You had sub A, sub B, and then standard 1, standard 2, standard 3. I think it was standard 2 that I had to repeat. And I was sitting on the floor. So it was primary school level, and the teacher we were learning the numbers. And I'd learnt to say the numbers, but I hadn't learnt writing the digits. And then when you say the numbers, you can kind of get the pattern, and you can go up once you've got the teen thing, which is a bit funky, but you kind of see that the teen means 10 and something. Then you have to learn the word for 20, and then you get 21, 22, and that's all, you can figure that out. And then you have to get the word 30, and then 40, 50, and those were obviously 3, 4, 5, so you could guess that 60 and 70 and 80 and 90. And then all the kids said 10, and the ones in the know knew that there's no number 10t, that 10t is called 100. So he invented this new 100. Then you got 100, 200, 300, and you got the pattern again. So the pattern needs a new word at every, they call that an order of magnitude now, don't they? Every power of 10, you have to invent a new word, and I so there was always this thing of what's the biggest number, and the biggest number, when you're only taught to say the numbers, the biggest number is the biggest one you know so far, because they're always going to invent a new word, and then they're not even consistent about it with billions and trillions and things. So this was a thing. There's the biggest number depended on whether you knew the words to say it or not. But when the teacher told us how to write down 1, 2, 3 and 10 and 11, I don't think she got much more than 20. Maybe even before she got to 20. Well, no, it wouldn't have been that. I think when she got to 20, it clicked. Now when you're writing them down, you don't need to invent a new word for the next power of 10, because it's just, you're not doing words anymore, you're doing digits, and you only need 10 of them, and click. I saw the whole thing and I thought, that's neat, that is so cool. And so you kind of have to know addition and multiplication. And then at some point I learned about this other operation called exponentiation, or exponent. That these numbers were kind of multiplication, the next thing after multiplication. And I tried to explain it to my mother, and I was a bit pretentious. And I said, it's the exponent. I said, it's like the x part. So you have 2 to the x. And I was just making that up because that was the only sense I could make of x in the name, not having any Latin. And my mum got really annoyed for me for being so pretentious. But then you get the next stage, you start cascading these operations. So you can use chained arrow notation or arrow notation or all these other kinds. And there was a video the other day on number file about a kind of polygonal numbering hierarchy, which allowed you to write down very concisely extremely large numbers. And but every time so the thing about ordinal notations is kind of similar. You've got to keep inventing a new language, except now you're doing the infinity thing, the step I got step 1 of when I was 5. You then repeat with omega. And you go up And eventually you get to the next mysterious unknown, because with omega you can have addition, multiplication, and you can define these transfinitely, and they kind of make sense. You have addition, multiplication, and exponentiation, but eventually you get a largest ordinal with a Cantor normal form, and then you have to invent a new name, and you call that epsilon naught. And I've never checked, but I guess you can use the whole Cantor normal form in the subscript. And when I was in Bolivia, I was planning to have a chapter of my book about this, and my idea was to program these arithmetics using recursive data types, because you're really computing with expressions now. I thought there might be a way to do it, but I never got that far. But Hannah Fry's video about Hilbert's Hotel is pretty good. It's a good starting point, because in each case you're giving an enumeration recipe, explicit enumeration recipe, and then you can perform substitutions on these enumeration functions. So you can build these hierarchies, these transfinite hierarchies. And then the next level, or maybe this is, I don't know where this one goes, but Jean-Yves Girard, on his web page, has a section at the bottom called the skeleton in the cupboard. And I guess he's talking about his skeleton in his cupboard. He says he lost faith in infinite reasoning about infinite ordinals. But before he did that, he made some progress, and he proved a theorem in 1975 showing that there's actually a correspondence between fast-growing hierarchies like the arrow notation and chained arrow notation and polygonal. These are all notations that produce huge finite numbers, and there's actually a category theoretic correspondence between, where you can extract some meaning from some kind of finitary interpretation from the transfinite notations. Anyway, so you see what that's got to do with the tree of life and the trees. You've got trees, and you're talking about the age of an individual tree, but you've got this mother root underneath. So you're really only talking about some part of a whole tree when you count the rings. about memory, I don't know. So I was thinking the fact that I can remember times with my mother, and my mother can't remember, but it's possible that she can't remember, never could remember that. Maybe it wasn't a significant moment for her. When you're a child, some of the things stick out more than others. My daughter was, I reminisced about something when she was about 9 or 10, and I threw her in a river. I threw her in the Cam at Sheep's Green, and she vehemently denied it. She said, "You stupid man," to me. But she did say that. I suppose being a stupid man, I just think that's funny. But she said to me in a text message or something, I would never say anything like that. And that was when I was on the street in Bolivia. For a while we were communicating. I think it was on WhatsApp. Until I discovered that in Bolivia, WhatsApp is an absolute nightmare, because when someone loses their phone, the number gets passed on very quickly. It gets sold on to someone else. So your contacts, random people turn up and your contacts morph into someone completely, who everyone uses WhatsApp. And so the next person gets the number issued to them by the phone company, and your account morphs into this other person. And all your contacts suddenly change to these strange people. What kind of a telephone system is that? I mean, I don't think even the mycorrhizal fungi system was that bad. So, yeah, I don't know. the reason that I didn't do that programming of ordinal notation was the only book I had on it that I knew well was Thomas Forster's Logic, Induction and Sets, in which he put something in the errata. Oh, I got this completely wrong, and then just nothing else about it. And I thought, oh, it didn't seem that wrong. And I suppose I was supposed to figure it out for myself. That was left as an exercise for the reader. Maybe Hannah Fry did that for me. I've been thinking about maths and not looking at geese. There's loads of geese here. That's 5 miles from anywhere up there, which is actually less than that from here. I think that's the end. That's the end of my video inspired by Hannah Fry. Thank you, Hannah. Wow, that was great, that tree. Here's a willow. There's a similar problem with them. I mean, you have got the same tree if you take a willow. If you take one of those branches and stick it over there, it's the same tree. You have to do the DNA.